Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to ST Supercars. So this morning I have just been to Halliwell Jones to drop off our 140 just for a little bit of warranty work. So whilst this car in the background may look like the usual 140 you're used to seeing, it's not. There were a few subtle changes to the spec compared to ours. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump in and talk through the interior spec of the car. Have a quick whiz round the exterior, although from the outside it is very much the same car. The biggest differences are inside, so I think if we just jump in the car now. So immediately there is one difference as soon as you jump in that sets this car off completely differently from ours, and that is this little stick down here. So down here you've got a manual gear stick, 6-speed, and then next to it the biggest other difference is this, which is obviously the standard kind of iDrive controller as opposed to the one on the professional media package, which is much larger and has the touchpad integrated within it as well. So what this does mean is actually you get the standard navigation in this car, whereas obviously on our car we've got the professional media package, so you get a much larger screen, and down here you get the nicer touchpad controller. So the other option we've got up here is the heated seats. So whilst it's summer and I'm really not going to use them, at least this car does actually have them spec'd. So yeah, that's kind of the interior. From the outside obviously it is a mineral grey car, so we'll just jump out and take a quick look at this. So if I just kind of walk around the car, you can see back here you've got the rear parking sensors like ours, but aside from that it is a mineral grey car which looks the same, but you'll see down here where there should be a parking sensor, it is just plastic. So yeah, that's probably the biggest difference between this and ours. So I think it's about time we jumped in the car and went for a drive. Straight away, what do I think of the manual? It's okay. It's a little bit rubbery, and being honest, the gear change isn't as satisfying as, for example, a Porsche manual gearbox. I find them very good and very easy to use. This is just a little bit notchy, like yeah, it's just a little bit rubbery, that's all. But yeah, do you know what's interesting though? Straight away, in gear it feels quicker. We've got it in sport, although what I find really interesting is straight away, even in comfort, the car will rev match for you. Oh, so now it's in sport, straight away I can feel the throttle response is sharper. And it's producing some lovely noises out the rear of the car. The thing is, I'm changing up and down a lot here, but realistically I can probably go in the highest gear if I wanted to as soon as possible and use the torque the engine's got available to drive the car. You don't necessarily need to be going up and down the box like I am, so quite comfortably I can cruise along at 30 in fourth. It's not too bad. I imagine when it comes to the motorway though, later on, it will be a little bit different just because it's not got the 8 gears, so I imagine the economy won't be as good, although I don't think there'll be much in it. But it's not taken me very long at all to get used to this manual gearbox. I've been driving it a whole 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops in total, and I find it very easy to get on with now. As I say, to begin with it felt a little bit rubbery and wasn't necessarily the most satisfying shift, but gotten used to it now. It's relatively easy to drive. I've been in some traffic as well, which obviously I'm not going to show you guys sitting in traffic, but it's fine to drive around town. But you know what, when you are feeling lazy, that auto rev matching feature is quite nice. If you don't want to constantly, like in traffic, say you want it to rev match in traffic, but you don't want to have to be heel and toeing. Yeah, it feels quicker in gear, if I'm honest, it really does. And since putting it in sport, that throttle response is definitely sharpened. Don't know whether it's a placebo, but it feels sharper than it does when you go from comfort to sport in the auto box, which is actually very, very interesting. But yeah, now I am getting used to it. The gearbox is easy to use, going up and down it, to be honest. And as I said before, the thing is, this car has that much torque, you are able to just use the in-gear acceleration available, so you don't have to change up and down as much as I am. But if I'm driving it, I want to have it making some noise, so the easiest way to do that is the same way as I do in the auto. I end up on the paddles going up and down all the time, unnecessarily, just to make a bit of noise. Because again, it is still very, very quiet in this cabin. Obviously, having a manual gearbox isn't going to change the noise that's in the cabin. Yeah, you can tell the gearing is definitely longer, which is an obvious statement. So it's not as easy to rev through the gears without doing silly speeds, which is obviously the only downside to this. So yeah, I'm currently stuck behind a learner, so it's given me the chance to see what this car is like to drive at relatively sensible and low speeds. So kind of replicating the in town, I'm constantly stop starting, and you know what, it's fine. I genuinely wouldn't have an issue using this day to day as a daily driver and a manual. I don't know if that's just me personally. Obviously the automatic, when it comes to heavy and long term kind of stop start traffic, it is much easier to have the auto. And being honest, I do actually think the shorter gearing on the 8-speed makes it a little bit more enjoyable to drive, just because yeah, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable to drive, just because of the fact that you can kind of go through the gears more often, whereas on this obviously you've got longer gears, so that it takes you to a much greater speed just going through, say, second and third than it would second and third on the auto. So I'd say that is definitely, for me, a bonus of the auto over the manual. But I do really, really enjoy the extra engagement you get from changing gear yourself. You've now got to think about what you're doing, you've got to plan in advance, which obviously driving an auto you don't always have to. You can kind of rely on the box to make those decisions for you, whereas it's not there to do that for you in a manual car. can't explain it, but it feels quicker in gear. There is definitely something more fun about a manual. It feels more engaging, more involving, and as I mentioned earlier, I do genuinely think I could live with this car as a manual, as a daily driver. The only times I think I'd really miss the auto is in heavy traffic. I think the rest of the time you could quite comfortably enjoy driving the manual car. Ooh, Panamera GTS, nice. Very nice. Everything else is very much the same as our car in terms of handling and feel. The steering is still very light. It firms up in sport, as we know. Right, let's just take a minute to calm it down and knock it into fourth and just drive it as if I was driving it as my daily car, because obviously if it was my daily, I wouldn't be driving it round 100 miles an hour everywhere. So yeah, round town it's relatively easy to drive. The clutch is very light, the biting point is alright, to be fair. It's easy to find, no issues there whatsoever. Really easy to pull off. It's not one of those silly clutches where you need to just let off and then apply the gas. It's just like a normal car to drive, so zero issues there. One thing I would say in terms of spec versus ours is that professional media for me is an absolute must. This smaller standard nav, whilst great as a standard option, don't get me wrong, I don't think I could live with that day to day. I think the Pro Nav adds a much more premium feel to the cabin. I just wanted to do this video really quickly because I wanted a manual. I thought it would be beneficial to note some of the key differences between the auto and the manual, so anyone out there who is like looking for it or wants an opinion, I would absolutely say if you can drive both. It's a very personal thing, but now having driven this manual, I can quite comfortably tell you I could live with this day to day and it will be no problem. Whilst the auto is great, I think the shorter ratios on the auto make it more usable. I think this feels quicker in gear. I think this is definitely more fun to drive, it's more involving. I like the auto blip feature for those of you, or those of us, who can't necessarily heel and tow all the time. The pedals are actually set up so you can heel and tow. I gave it a go earlier on, and do you know what? It's not too badly, but I mean, the computer rev matches for you perfectly every time. So why not? Why not just let it do it? I know some people will say the extra involvement, but on your day-to-day driving, do you really want to be having to heel and tow every single time you come to brake, you come to slow down? I mean, some people will obviously quite happily do that, but for your general, like for me, if I was in traffic, I'd be quite happy to let the box do its thing, mainly because I do think that it's just one less thing you've got to think about, and it sounds good. I think the manual definitely makes it more fun. As soon as you hit any kind of twisty roads, it is more fun. There is no denying it. I had such a huge smile on my face earlier, going up and down the box, playing with the gears. It's been a good experience with this manual, being completely honest. It really has. It's really genuinely been quite fun. I'm glad I've had the opportunity to try one now, but you know what, in essence the car still sounds fantastic, still handles, drives exactly the same as you'd expect. You wouldn't expect it to be any difference. Obviously I was just really interested to see what difference the manual made on the experience of driving the car, and for me it definitely adds to it. It makes it more enjoyable, it gets you more involved. You've got to plan and think ahead, you've got to work out what gear do I want to be in, although I have mentioned that's not necessarily as important in this car. Just because the torque band is so wide, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's all I've got time for. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you've got any comments, leave them below and subscribe to the channel. Cheers guys!